Welcome, and thank you for joining for another whiskey review. Today, we're going to take a look at the 2024 release of Old Fitzgerald, this time a 13-year-old. Dustin, even though it's a 2024 release at 50% bottle and bond ABV, you said to us on a text message thread, this is a 1999 distillate. And I said, Dustin, that's not how numbers work. And then you told me, so go ahead and tell us what that's all about, my friend.
Yeah, so the story is, this is the 25th anniversary of Heaven Hill buying the Old Fitzgerald name. And so this was from the first year that they were distilling at Heaven Hill, 1999. And I guess apparently they cranked out a batch of 13-year-old bourbon and said, this is so good.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to leave it as is.
We need to release this as a special edition at some point. And we're just going to stick it in a steel vat and hold on to it until it's ready. So the 25th anniversary was when they finally decided it's time to crack this out.
Well, to be fair, it was ready when it was 13-year-old ready to go. They were just waiting for an opportune time to...
Yeah, the opportunity to properly release this thing.
Great cork as always.
Yeah.
Nice looking bottle as always. Clumsy to deal with, Dustin.
The official butt plug of whiskey. Corks.
Decorative. And if you guys haven't noticed, we got our buddy Keith with us again. Keith, always a subscriber favorite. A lot of those guys like when you bounce on here. If you ever watch any whiskey reviews, you know that. All right.
It's been a rough 2 years.
Cheers to Donner, who the official cheerleader of Keith Malted Man Cave.
He's going to be so happy.
I love you, buddy.
He's going to be so happy.
Love you.
All right. Let's get into it, guys.
Ooh. This is just heaven in a glass, buddy.
Nice nose. Nice oak note.
The difference in quality from the Eagle Rare Ted. And I like Eagle Rare Ted.
Yeah.
The Party Source Private Barrel.
But there's like this custard thing going on with like a little bit of an umami note that I don't understand because it's all sweet, but yet there's something savory here.
Yeah, there's some type of marmalade.
It's got a slight pickle note. Maybe it's the wood.
There's a sweet and sour thing going on here. I don't know about pickle, but yeah. It's this like, there's almost like an Elmer glue note there in a really good way.
There's something different than all the vanilla, oaky, cherry.
No, this is unique.
What is that?
So I actually poured some.
Probably the oak note.
I poured some of the Old Fitzgerald 16-year next to this one, and there's a lot of similarities to it. But at the same time, like this is just so uniquely different. Like I don't know what was happening back in 1999 when they were distilling this. Maybe they hadn't figured out the profile exactly right. And they just stumbled on a slightly off profile but beautiful whiskey. I don't know what they did, but man, does this smell good.
There's a little pretzel note, like a soft pretzel. Did you ever, what do you think is your favorite Old Fitz out of all of them? Don't include this one, so we don't ruin the review.
The 19 year is probably the best I've had, but I really didn't have a good sampling of that. Of the two I own, it's the 16 over the 15 by a hair, but they're really similar. And that's kind of the thing, is like the older Fitzes really do have a similarity in them. This is just so different.
Yeah.
And I've only had like one pour of like one that was under like 12 years, and it was very forgettable. This is not forgettable.
I just got a juicy fruit. Sorry, Mike. I just got a slight juicy fruit note, which was really pleasant.
I can see that.
Yeah, again, to me, it's still like the oak note is here, still the show for me. That oak note is adding some nice spice, a little bit of texture to it. They complement the sweetness that's obviously there.
I mean, I think the big picture here is it's just the balance of sweet, fruity, oaky, with this slightly is it possible to say a savory pastry? I don't know if that makes any sense. Maybe like you cooked something like in bacon grease or sausage grease. Sausage grease is actually probably a better descriptor. Or it just kind of has like a white gravy kind of a thing going on in here.
What type of wood? I mean, obviously we know it's in new oak, but what does it cherry wood remind you of? Does it remind you of the cherry is definitely not as intense as Eagle Rare and Elijah Craig 18, those type of things.
I mean, not to be nerdy, I would suspect that this was aged in. This reminds me of something that would have been aged in the Bernheim rick houses, so those brick rick houses Heaven Hill owns. I don't know if that's the case, but that's the profile this is kind of more giving me. But that's...
You know what it is? It's a slight vinegar note. That's what it is. And I think I think it's good, and I think it makes it very, very exceptional. and unique.
I mean, but again, the point I just got to get to is that this is an incredible nose, and it's because of this balancing that they're doing here with these unique notes.
That was a good finish to it. Up front, sweet, cherry, getting all that, a little bit of oak spice to it. Nothing too mind-blowing initially on the palate, but then after you swallow it for a second or two, there's a nice little swell that comes up. I think driven a lot by the oak presence in it, and man, it's a really nice finish on this one. A little bit almost furniture polish along with that cherry too.
Yep. I think one thing I'd add is there's like a toasted pastry note coming through with like some butter on it all throughout, which again isn't normal in these Fitzgeralds. Like everything else Mike said, that's on profile.
Sure.
This is
I think that's the oak note though. Maybe giving it that.
But it's different. I've never gotten this like. You're probably right. It's coming from the oak, but it's like, man, again, these barrels took on their own unique character.
Yeah.
Like something really different, and
Then sat in the still vat for 12 years.
And the vat could have changed stuff for sure. I mean,
I'm not picking up being metallic or anything like that.
Well, no, but like,
I think.
But I mean, time is going to change stuff. Stuff changes over time. It doesn't just stay completely inert, no matter how inert the surroundings are.
Yeah,
you can't tell me anything like chemically just stays exactly the same, especially something like alcohol, where it wants to vaporize if you don't keep it sealed.
There definitely is, like a cherry glaze, cherry wood, dusty, carpenter shop. You get a slight toffee note, I think.
It's
not strong, but just hiding behind all that. And there, for me, and I don't get the vinegar, and like I said, it's not super, it took me forever to find it. It was almost like a sweet and sour, a dill pickle, and then it's just a slight vinegar. I don't get it on the palate, but it definitely is there on the nose.
So having gone, we had Eagle Rare before this, and when I compared this with the 16 myself, what I would kind of say is instead of cherry, it's like a cherry lime. Like there's actually a little bit of sour lime note with that cherry.
Yeah.
There's some sour, you're right.
Agreed.
But again, makes this unique. It's not normal because the 16 was just good old cherries. This is a different experience. And I gotta say, it's surprisingly hot on when you swallow. Like for 100 proof, it's punchy. It's got some oomph to it. I was kind of surprised,
especially on the finish. It really swelled. Swelled.
It really came in strong. Because it's kind of a thinner whiskey at 100 proof. Even 400 proof, I want to say it's thinner.
I agree.
I think it's thinner than Eagle Rare.
Yeah.
Little dusty corn note.
Sure. And the varnish, you got it. Definitely it's got some varnish, which at 13 years you expect some, but you don't know how much you're going to get. This has a little more than maybe I would have expected on the 13.
I get some type of dry note too. Dry corn husk, dry hay, and it probably isn't hay. Maybe corn husk. I just can't think of anything else better to describe it.
It works. Do you guys like the varnish notes?
I love it.
It's usually a sign that it's kind of older whiskey.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite notes. If I get that on a bourbon, I'm already in my sweet spot.
Have you ever had? I think I've had a few that they're too strong though. I do like the varnish.
Balcones, for example, I've had some of those that started to get some of that, and whoo, that was not pleasant. And I've had a few that had acetane with the varnish, like a Weller 107, where it was I get varnish, that's cool. And then I'm paint thinner. Mm-hmm. You missed it on this one for me, guys. Not a normal note on Weller 107, by the way, guys, but I've had some bad ones.
All right, guys. Whiskey score time. Dustin, your bottle, so we'll go Keith, me next, and we'll let Dustin tell us what he thinks later. It's going to be higher than ours.
Maybe not. I'm at a 90, man. I really like this. First of all, I love Old Fitz. I love the bottles. I've always wanted to have a bottle of my own. I never have. Obviously, we know King of Kentucky and some of those other bourbons are a little bit better, but I really like that that slight vinegar. It sounds bad. I know it sounds like something you wouldn't want to have in a bourbon, but it added a nice complexity along with all the other beautiful notes.
People love vinegar chips and stuff, right? So it goes sweet and savory.
And I think
it's
just amazing. My apologies.
No, good. Keep on.
It's just amazing how, when you have a great or good to great bourbon or even, scotch, when you have one that's not as good, it's when you smell it's like this. For this one, it just came like this. It just expands how much more powerful and rich it is.
I love the hands, man. That's the best way to say it. It's just it just hits you.
It goes to here, all the flavors and just richness in it. Yeah, I'm at a 90.
I'm a little lower than Keith. I'm kicking around 2 scores. I'm actually going to give the lower of the 2 scores. I don't think it didn't handle water great. I'm an 87 out of 100, but keep in mind that was never a huge fan of these Old Fitzgeralds to begin with. I thought a few of them were good, but this is another thing very similar to, say, Long Row Reds. Man, if they're 14, 15, 16 years old, they're a lot better when they're 11, 12, 13 years old, in my opinion. I think it's a solid offering. I'm not the biggest fan, again, of this release. 87 out of 100.
Wow. I got to strongly disagree with the water comment because I put just a drop of water in here, and let me tell you, it is smelling even better than before, man.
Nothing changed, though. It's the exact same thing.
It is bringing me to smell that. I mean, I'm getting all the best. Maybe I put less water than you did, or more. I don't know.
Maybe.
I got it.
Same bottle. I know what you're experiencing, man.
I'm telling you. So I think Keith's score is probably right where I'm at.
90?
I was between 89 and 90. The uniqueness on the nose and that, again, that savory, umami thing mixed in with the sweet notes I've never had before. This is a distinctly unique. It's a 92, 93 on the nose for me. It's one of the best smelling bourbons I've ever had. It's not King Kentucky. It's maybe not the best George T. Stagg or Michter's 20 or something crazy.
Not a lot of room.
But it's right there, after that group. It's incredible. The palate's not as good, especially up front on the arrival. But the finish really comes in and brings it back up. And I'm so in love with the nose on this one. I think the 90's fair. If you're not if it's all about the taste to you and the nose is just a nice bonus, you're probably more like an 89. But that's kind of where I'm at. I love this whiskey.
So you're thinking I'm just wrong at 87?
Yes.
No, it's your own
it's your experience, but
it's your own experience.
I think
you can still be wrong.
I think we gave 89, 90s to the 15 and 16, and I think
Those are better whiskeys.
See, that's where I'm just not sure I agree.
We need to compare sometime, though. That might change my mind on how I look at it.
Anyway,
yeah,
It's that unique note, though, that I get. So maybe you just don't like that unique note.
And that could definitely be, that's fair.
For sure. I mean, I'm not saying you guys are wrong with the unique note and a few other things. I'm saying, so what? It wasn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't amazing. Anyway, those are our thoughts on this particular whiskey. If you guys had a chance to try this 2024 Old Fitzgerald 13-year-old, we'd like to know what you guys think. Dustin, until next time, we'll do this, folks.
Happy old drinking.
We'll see you then.